Welcome to i-TUTOR Economics NCERT series. Today we are going to deal with Chapter 5, Human Capital Formation in India. Let's start with a simple question. What is that one factor which made human progress so much compared to other living beings? It is our ability to store and transmit knowledge through conversation, through songs, and through elaborate lectures. This ability helped us learn skills, innovate, and improve productivity over generations. Now, here's an important point. A skilled and educated person can work more efficiently than an uneducated person. As a result, the educated person earns more income and contributes more to the growth of the economy. So, education is not just about money. It also gives many other important benefits like better social status and respect in society, ability to make informed choices in life, understanding social and technological changes, encouraging innovation and creativity, helping a country adapt to new technologies faster, and so on. Economists therefore emphasizes that expanding educational opportunities is crucial because it accelerates a nation's development. Now, what is human capital? Let's begin with an example. Just as a country can take physical resources like land and use them to build factories, it can also take human resources like students and develop them into human capital, like engineers, doctors, teachers, scientists, and so on. So, human capital means the knowledge, skills, abilities, and health that people have, which help them to be productive and contribute to economic growth. Why human capital is important? To produce professionals like doctors or engineers, we first need trained teachers, professors, and trainers. That means we already need good human capital to create more human capital. This shows a cycle. When we invest in education or training and health, that leads to or that investment creates skilled, healthy people, and that leads to people who can help to create more skilled people and drive economic growth. Thus, forming human capital is just like investing in machines or factories, but here the machines are people. To understand human capital deeply, we need to think about sources, relation between human capital and economic growth of the country, link with human development and government's role. Human capital doesn't just happen automatically. It builds through investment. Just like how companies invest money in machines to get higher profit, people and government invest in education, health, training, migration, and information to make people more skilled, efficient, and productive. So, let's look at education. Education is the main source of human capital formation. When parents spend money on your schooling or college, it's not just an expense, it's an investment. Why? Because it increases your future income. Just like how a company invests in machine expecting future profit. For example, if students study to become an engineer, the money spent on education today helps him earn more later through better jobs. Now, what about health? Health is as important as education for human development. A healthy person can work better, learn faster, and be more productive than a sick person. A laborer who is unwell and cannot afford medical treatment will miss work, causing loss of productivity. Therefore, expenditure on health like hospitals, nutrition, sanitation, clean water, etc. is an investment in human capital formation. Now, on the job training. When workers learn new skills while working, their efficiency and productivity will improve. Companies often give such training to employees to help them perform better. This training increases the value of human capital. Now, what's the next factor? Migration. Sometimes people move from rural areas to cities or even abroad for better education or jobs. This movement increases their income and skill level, contributing to human capital formation. For example, a nurse from India working in the UK earns more and learns better medical techniques. That's human capital improvement. So let's look at next factor, that is information. People also invest time and money to get information about job markets, salaries, and educational institutions. Better information helps individuals and governments make smart decisions that increase human capital. In short, human capital is formed through investment in education, health, training, migration, and information. Now let's look at physical and human capital. Human capital is built not only through education but also by improving skills and health. Both are essential for increasing productivity and earning capacity. Health is wealth, right? So especially for developing country like India, health is everything. When the government or individuals spend on healthcare, it directly improves the supply of healthy, energetic and productive labor. So what are the forms of health expenditure? First one is preventive medicine. That means, for example, vaccination to prevent diseases like polio or measles. Then next one, curative medicines. That means medical treatment when someone falls sick. And the third one is social medicine, spreading health awareness and literacy so people adopt healthy habits. And the fourth one is clean drinking water and sanitation. For example, if a person stays healthy because of vaccination and clean water, they can work regularly and contribute more to the economy. Therefore, health expenditure is equal to investment in human capital because it leads to a more productive workforce. Then we talked about on-the-job training. That means companies often train their employees to make them more efficient. This is called on-the-job training. Forms of on-the-job training are training within the firm and off-campus training. Training within the firm means workers learn under the guidance of a skilled senior worker. And off-campus training means workers are sent outside the firm to learn new techniques or management techniques. So in both cases, the firm bears the training cost. So they usually require the workers to stay for a fixed time afterwards to recover the benefit of improved productivity. For example, when a factory trains its workers to use modern machines, their efficiency rises and so does production. The gain is higher than the training cost. Hence, training expenditure is equal to human capital investment because it gives returns in the form of higher productivity. So, people move from one place to another in search of better jobs, right? So, the next factor is migration. And in India, many people move from villages to cities because they don't find enough jobs in rural areas. Similarly, skilled people like engineers and doctors move to other countries because they get higher salaries there. However, migration also has some cost, such as travel cost or travel expenses, higher living costs in cities, and the emotional or psychic stress of living in a new environment. But since people earn more in the new place than what they spend on these costs, migration becomes an investment in human capital. It increases their earning capacity. People also spend money to get information about job opportunities and other markets like education and health. For example, they may want to know what salaries are offered for different jobs, which educational institutes provide useful job skills, and how much they cost, and so on. Such information helps people decide where to invest in education or training and how to make the best use of their skills later. So spending money to get this information is also an investment in human capital. Just like physical capital, human capital also helps in production. But while both are important for development, there are similarities and differences between them. Now let's look at the differences between physical and human capital. So both are results of investment decisions. Both physical capital like machines, tools, etc. and human capital like education, skills, health and so on are created by spending money and effort consciously. And the next similarity is decision making. For physical capital, the owner calculates profit before investing. But for human capital, parents, teachers and society often decide for children. For example, sending them to school or giving them healthcare. So human capital formation is partly a social process and partly a personal choice. And the third one is tangibility. Tangible means You can touch and feel it, right? And physical capital is tangible. You can touch and sell it, like a bus or a machine. But human capital is intangible. It's inside a person, like skills, knowledge, health, etc. And it cannot be sold. Only the services can be offered. For example, a teacher teaching for students. And the next one, presence and separability. A bus owner doesn't need to be there when the bus is used. But a bus driver, that means human capital, must be there to drive it. Hence, physical capital is separable and human capital is inseparable. Now, the next difference is mobility. Physical capital, like machines or money, can easily move between countries. Human capital is less mobile because of differences in languages, culture, and nationality. So, physical capital can be imported, but human capital must be developed within the country. And the next difference is depreciation. What is meant by depreciation? Yes, loss of value. Machines depreciate with use and become outdated due to new technology. But human capital depreciates with age, but can be renewed by continuous education and healthcare. And physical capital gives private benefit. That means only the owner earns profit. Human capital gives both private and social benefits. Private means better job and income for the individual. Social means suppose an educated person, he helps society like making better decisions, cleanliness, and social awareness. In short, tangibility or tangible, intangible. The main differences are tangible and intangible. Then can it be sold? Then depreciation. Then mobility, decision making process, and so on. Now let's start with a simple question. Who do you think contributes more to the national income? Who contributes more to the national income? A factory worker or a software engineer? You will probably say software engineer, right? But why is that so? Let's understand. An educated and skilled person has more ability to work efficiently than an uneducated person. An educated person uses knowledge, new methods, and creativity, leading to higher productivity. So, they earn more income and also contribute more to the national income. And what about meaning of economic growth? Economic growth means an increase in a country's real national income. That is when people collectively produce more goods and services. So, if the human capital, that means education, skill, and health, human capital of people improves, the country's income also grows. Health. What is the role of health here? Health is important as education. A healthy person can work continuously and effectively for a longer time. A sick person cannot contribute regularly to production. Hence, good health increases productivity and supports economic growth. Other contributors to human capital are, besides education and health, there are other factors that increase a person's productivity. What are they? We have already told it: on-the-job training, then job market information, migration, and so on. All these together increases a person's income generating capacity. Now, human capital doesn't just make people work better. It also helps society and the economy in a bigger way. It encourages innovation and inventions. It also helps adopt new technologies. It supports scientific advancements and overall development. So, education increases knowledge, skill, productivity, and innovation. Health provides uninterrupted, efficient labor supply, training, and now let's look at the empirical evidence between human capital and economic growth. Economists have tried to find proof, that means empirical evidence, that when human capital increases, what happens? It directly causes economic growth. But the results are not very clear, meaning there is no strong or consistent proof. So it's hard to measure human capital accurately. For example, there is an indicator problem. In education, we measure it by years of schooling, enrollment rate, teacher-pupil ratio, and so on. This doesn't show how good the education actually is, or the quality is not captured. What about health? It is measured by money spent, life expectancy, or mortality rate. These may not show the real health condition of the population. So, the numbers we use might not reflect the true quality of human capital. So what studies show? When we compare developing and developed countries, the human capital in developing countries has more improved more rapidly. But the per capita real income has not increased at the same pace. In short, developing countries are catching up in education and health but not catching up in income. So there is a two-way link between human capital and income. When human capital increases, it leads to educated and healthy people, and it increases productivity that leads to national income. When national income increases, it leads to increase in human capital. So both help each other. It's a circular relationship. Evidences, so in summary we can say that evidences linking human capital and economic growth is not conclusive. Measurement issues make it hard to capture the true quality of education and health. Developing nations have improved faster in human capital than in income growth. The relationship works both ways. When there is higher income, it leads to human capital, and human capital builds income. That is, higher income causes building of high level of human capital and vice versa. That is, high level of human capital causes growth of income. So now, India's recognition of human capital and economic growth. India realized long ago that education and health are key drivers of development and economic growth. As stated in the 7th 5-year plan, the plan clearly said that human resource development must play a central role in India's development strategy. A large, trained and educated population can become an asset that helping to speed up growth and bring positive social changes. So it's hard to prove directly that education and health cause economic growth, but data shows that when human capital grows, economic growth also rises. Both seems to support and reinforce each other. In short, India always valued human capital as a foundation for progress. The 7th 5-year plan stressed that population become an asset only when educated and trained. Though the cause effect link is complex, education, health and economic growth tend to grow together and strengthen one another. So now let's look at human capital as a driver of India's growth. Two independent reports recently highlighted that India's growth prospects are strong because of its human capital formation. Two independent reports recently highlighted that India's growth prospects are strong because of its human capital formation. Global growth centers identified that India will emerge as one among 4 major growth centers in the world by 2020. Human capital is the most important factor of production today. If human capital are increased, it leads to GDP growth. Between 2005 and 2020, average years of education in India is expected to rise by 40%, reaching just over 7 years. This implies that education and skill development will significantly contribute to economic growth. So in short, human capital is the key driver of India's future growth. If education are improved, it leads to increase in GDP. India predicted to be one of the top global growth center by 2020. Now, World Bank in its recent report told that India and the knowledge economy states that India should make a transition to the knowledge economy, and if it uses its knowledge as much as Ireland does, that Ireland uses its knowledge economy very effectively, then the per capita income of India will increase from a little over $1,000 in 2002 to $3,000 in 2020. That means if India uses knowledge as effectively as Ireland, its per capita income could rise from just over $1,000 in 2002 to $3,000 by 2020. India already has the key ingredient for this transition. What are they? Yes, we have a critical mass of skilled workers. Then a well-functioning democracy, and also we have a diversified science and technology infrastructure. So both the Deutsche Bank and World Bank report indicate that further investment in human capital can propel India to a higher growth trajectory. Now, human capital and human development. The two terms sound similar, but there is a clear distinction between human capital and human development. Human capital considers education and health as a means to improve or increase labor productivity. Human development is based on the idea that education and health are integral to human well-being, because only when people have the ability to read and write and the ability to lead a long and healthy life, they will be able to make other choices which they value. So value in investment. Investment in education or health is valuable only if it boosts productivity. Investment is valuable even if it does not increase productivity. For example, training workers to improve factory output, providing basic literacy and healthcare so people can live meaningful, healthy life. So the key idea is human capital emphasizes economic returns, whereas human development emphasizes human welfare and capability. The human development perspective, basic education and health are fundamental rights of every individual. It's not just about increasing productivity or income. It's about ensuring that every person has the opportunity to live a healthy, informed and meaningful life. So, human capital formation in India. In India, specifically through education, while health will be discussed separately under infrastructure. Okay. So, human capital formation comes from investment in education, health, on-the-job training, migration and information. Education and health are the most important sources of human capital. And what about federal structure in India? We have union government, state government and local governments. For this section, we will analyze only education as health is covered elsewhere. So, why government intervention is needed? Education and health creates both private and social benefit. It creates both private and social benefits. What are the private benefits? Direct benefit to the individual. Example, better job prospects, good health and so on. What are the social benefits? Yes, benefits to society. For example, literate citizens reduce disease spread. And what are the long-term impacts? Investment in education and health have lasting effects. Poor quality can cause irreversible harm. And individuals may not know that the true quality or cost of services. Private providers could exploit this by overcharging or providing substandard services. So what is the government role? They ensure quality standards, regulate pricing, prevent exploitation by private providers. Who manages education? Yes, union and state ministers of education, Department of Education at the state and local level, regulatory and academic bodies. Then NCERT. NCERT means National Council of Education and Research. Education, Research and Training. Then UGC, University Grants Commission. Then All India Council for Technical Education. Now, who manages health? Union and state ministers of health. Then at state and local levels and regulatory and research bodies, ICMR, that means Indian Council for Medical Research. So the government intervenes to ensure quality, affordability and accessibility in education and health because these sectors have high social importance and potential for market failure. In a developing country like India, a large portion of the population cannot afford basic education or healthcare. Access to higher education or super specialty medical care is even more limited for poor families. Basic education and healthcare are considered fundamental rights of citizens. Therefore, the government must provide these services free of cost for deserving citizens, socially oppressed classes, and so on. Both union and state government have increased spending on education over the years. The aim is to achieve 100% literacy. Higher average education attainment across the country. So the key point is government intervention is essential in India to ensure equitable access to education and health, especially for the poor and marginalized, fulfilling both social and economic objectives. Now let's look at the education sector in India. Government spending on education is measured in two ways. What are they? As a percentage of total government expenditure and as a percentage of GDP. As a percentage of total government expenditure, it shows how important education is in the overall government budget. As a percentage of GDP shows how much of the nation's national income is being invested in education. The trend shows that during 1952 to 2002, as percentage of government total government expenditure increased from 7.92% to 13.17%. As a percentage of GDP, it increased from 0.64% to 4.02%. Growth has not been uniform. There were fluctuations in spending. What about private expenditure? When private spending by individuals and philanthropic institutions is added, total expenditure on education is much higher than government figures alone. So the key point is government commitment to education has increased significantly over 5 decades, but spending patterns have been irregular and private contributions forms a substantial part of overall education investment. Now let's look at education expenditure level. When we look at the elementary education, it receives the largest share of total education expenditure. Why? Because most students are at this level and universal primary education is a priority. What about higher or tertiary education? However, it receives the least share of total expenditure. However, expenditure per student is higher than at the elementary level. Why? Because colleges, polytechnics and universities require more resources per students, like for example lab, research facilities, specialized faculties and so on. What about policy insights? Spending should not be shifted from tertiary to elementary education. Expansion of school education requires more trained teachers who are prepared in higher education institutions. Therefore, all levels of education need increased funding simultaneously. So balancing expenditure across levels is essential. Supporting higher education indirectly strengthens elementary education by producing qualified teachers. When we look at the per capita education expenditure across states, we can see a wide variation across states. It is highest in Lakshadweep, that is 3,440, and it is lowest in Bihar, that is 386. So the impact is it creates a significant difference. It creates a significant difference in education opportunities and outcomes across states. So it is 3,440 in Lakshadweep and 386 in Bihar. Now, when we compare it with recommended levels, Education Commission, according to 1964-66 Education Commission recommended at least 6% of GDP should be spent on education. And the purpose is to achieve a noticeable improvement in educational achievements. And the reality was many states are far below this target, showing the inadequacy of expenditure. So the key point is unequal spending leads to unequal access to education, and India's education expenditure has historically been below the recommended level of substantial improvement. Now, education as a fundamental right and expenditure in India. When we look at the constitutional provisions, 86th Amendment of Constitution made in December 2002. It made free and compulsory education a fundamental right for children aged 6 to 14 years. So, 86th Amendment of Constitution made compulsory education as a fundamental right for children aged 6 to 14 years. Tepas Majumdar Committee. In 1998, Tepas Majumdar Committee estimated rupees 1.37 lakh crore over 1998-99 to 2006-07 to bring all children in the age 6 to 14 age group under school education. And just over 4% of GDP or below the desired 6% of GDP is the current expenditure. Our goal is to increase education expenditure to 6% of GDP, and the current level of little over 4% has been quite inadequate. Now let's look at the funding measures. Union budget from 2000 to 2005 introduced a 2% education cess on union taxes, and the estimated revenue was rupees 4,000 to 5,000 crore, fully earmarked for elementary education. And higher education promotion and standard loan schemes also needed additional allocations. So the key point is, while education has been made a fundamental right, financial allocation remains below the desired level, and additional funding measures like the education cess have been introduced to address this gap. Now, what are the key indicators of educational achievement? First one is adult literacy rate. It measures the percentage of adults, usually 15 plus years, who can read and write. It reflects overall literacy progress of the population. And the second one is primary education completion rate. It means the percentage of children completing primary school. It indicates the effectiveness of elementary education. And the third indicator is youth literacy rate. That means literacy level among the youth, typically 15 to 24 years. It shows the impact of recent education policies on younger generation. And the trend, that is from 1990 to 2000, it shows that improvement in literacy and educational attainment was observed across all indicators. Youth literacy rate generally increased faster than adult literacy, showing that recent generation benefited more from expanded education. Now let's look at the literacy improvements. Literacy rates for adults and youth have increased over decades. Despite this, the absolute number of illiterate is still extremely high compared to India's entire population at the time of independence, that means at 1950s. And the directive principles of Constitution aim to improve free and compulsory education to all children up to 14 years within 10 years of the Constitution. Now, India has not achieved 100% literacy even after more than 70 years of independence, and the challenges ahead are, while progress has been made, India still faces a long road to achieve universal literacy and ensure equitable access to quality education for all. Now, higher education, a few takers. Fewer people reach higher education levels in India, forming a narrow top of the education pyramid. According to NSSO data in 2000, unemployment rate for educated youth is just 7.1%, and unemployment rate for people with up to primary education is 1.2%. So we need a government action for increasing allocation for higher education, improve the quality of higher education institutions, and impart employable skills to reduce unemployment among educated youth. So, economic and social benefits. Human capital formation and human development generates both economic growth and social progress. Then union and state government in India allocate substantial funds to develop education and health sector. And we need an equitable spread. Education and health service must reach all sectors of society to achieve both growth and equity. And we also need scientific and technical manpower. India possesses a strong stock of skilled manpower. The focus now should be on improving quality and creating conditions for optimal domestic utilization. So let's read the conclusion. The economic and social benefit of human capital formation and human development are well known. The union and state government in India have been earmarking substantial financial outlays. Outlays means expenditure for development of education and health sector. The spread of education and health service across different sectors of society should be ensured so as to simultaneously attain economic growth and equity. India has a rich stock of scientific and technical manpower in the world. The need of the hour is to better it quantitatively and provide such conditions so that higher education, a few takers are utilized in our country. So that's all about this chapter and human capital formation. Hope you understand. Thanks for watching. For more related contents, do like, share and subscribe.